What's up, YouTube? And hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Juju, and today we'll be going over all of the balance updates to Light's Verdict. So Light's Verdict has been out for a week, or 2 weeks, sorry, and yeah, the meta has pretty much been settled. Honestly, my opinion about the set, nothing has been too impactful on the metagame. Blade of Whiteplain is probably the most impactful card. Divine Coronet and Phyrric Knowledge have also seen play in like OTK decks. Also, the Chosen One cards are pretty underwhelming, and as well as all the other cards. However, though, I still think it's too early to tell. Honestly, there's a lot more discovering to be seen, so we'll see what happens. But from this initial update, let's just jump into the article. So TLDR, no hard nerfs. That's pretty good. I think it's too early to do any hard nerfs, just because of how new the mini set is, but we'll see what happens, right? Oh, there's only going to be one balance update to Light's Verdict cards. I highly doubt that. I feel like, once again, it's too early, and once broken combos start being discovered, or if anything like broken starts to emerge, the devs will have to add an additional nerf. We'll see, or an additional buff. We don't even know what happens. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the changes. Divine Coronet moves from 4 mana to 5 mana. Okay, so I see why they did that. It's because of the prominence in like the Magic OTK decks. Unfortunately, because the devs are not nerfing any Genesis set cards like Clone or Warp Engineer, or I don't know, any of the other cards that from that set that enable OTKs, they're going to have to limit the amount of cards that can synergize with those cards, right? And Divine Coronet is one of those cards that synergize with Warp Engineer and Clone. So it is what it is. It's a byproduct of the devs' philosophy of not nerfing any Genesis set cards. And unfortunately, for any devs that develop any cards for the future of this game, they're going to have to constantly think about, does this card synergize with Clone and Warp Engineer, right? So I see why the nerf happened. It's going to slow down the Coronet combo. Honestly, I don't think the deck is too powerful. Of course, it can net some powerful turns, obviously, with great draws, but at the end of the day, it's just a combo deck in a game where aggro is pretty prominent. So as long as aggro decks are powerful, I don't think the Divine Coronet OTK will see any play in the metagame, unless, of course, it's to counter any control deck or control deck lineup. Cool. Next up, we have Phyrric Knowledge. It changes its text to Solace. Pull a spell with mana cost 7 or less from your void to your hand and obliterate cards from the top of your deck equal to its mana cost. Set the spell's cost to 0. Obliterate at the end of your turn. Okay, so yeah, they're essentially future-proofing this card because this card can enable OTKs. That's good because now they're not... This card would have been a card they need to consider in future sets for like spells. So yeah, I could see why they're nerfing this card, setting a ceiling to mana cost 7. So that gives them a little bit of design flexibility there, where they can create like really powerful 9 mana cost spells, 8 mana cost spells, which is good for the game, honestly. And honestly, if I'm designing a 9 mana cost spell or an 8 mana cost spell, like, that's a spell that I would want to use to win the game, or at least put myself in a significant position to win the game, right? So great job, devs. I agree with this nerf. Blade of Whiteplain, stats changed. Uh-oh. Attack and health stats changed from 4/4 to 3/3. Ugh. I don't know if I like this. If you're going to change it from a 4/4 to a 3/3, please make it a 4 mana card then, because... The reason why I'm saying this is because 5 mana 3/3 that destroys a monster and nets you a draw, although it's really nice. I personally think Blade of Whiteplain was one of those cards that was going to make mid-range decks meta relevant again. And because of this nerf, I don't necessarily believe that anymore. It's a significant nerf to mid-range decks. It's doesn't really affect aggro decks per se, although I don't understand why you would want to play. I mean, you'd probably want to play this card in an aggro deck if you don't have any draw, but I mean, there are a lot of different ways aggro decks can draw, right? I'd probably play Blade of Whiteplain in an aggressive aggro deck with, say, I don't know, in a God Domain like nature that doesn't have ways to draw. But if you're looking at cards like War, or if you're looking at cards like, or classes like War, or Magic has a lot of ways to draw. War has reinforcements. War has injured soldiers, injured scouts. It's a 3-mana spell that draws for every damaged creature you have. There are just so many ways to like draw in other aggro decks, so I don't think this would affect it too much. I do see why the nerf is. In control decks, Blade of Whiteplain still nets you a draw, and that could be good, especially in decks that need control decks that need to draw, such as Board Wipe Death. But yeah, it just hurts mid-range a lot, and mid-range decks are something I'd like to see in Gods Unchained because of, I don't know, right now, if you look at the current metagame, you don't really see a lot of mid-range decks, right? You see a lot of control, and you see a lot of aggro, and you see some OTK, but mid-range decks are supposed to be ways to kind of keep aggro and control in check in a way. Yeah, because if you just rely on OTK decks to keep control in check, then you're not going to be having fun as a game designer per se, because you can't really make, as a game designer, from a game designer perspective, you can't really make OTK decks too strong, because if you do, then, you know, if you do rely on OTK decks as a counter to control as a game designer, then you do risk making those OTK decks too strong. And then if you make the OTK decks too weak, you make the control decks too strong, right? So you're kind of playing a delicate balance here with, you know, making, with game design in terms of like, hey, like we only have these 3 decks that are really relevant to the metagame. Sorry, talking is hard. And we have to use these, we have to like form like a really delicate balance. By providing mid-range, however, you give another way of balancing not just control decks, but you give another way of balancing aggro decks too, because creating more powerful mid-range cards can, you know, I'd say creating more powerful mid-range cards could possibly help mitigate the power level of aggressive decks. But it could also just give a more flexible playstyle for players that don't want to play control, aggro, or OTK. So yeah, I don't necessarily agree with this nerf. We didn't even touch like the economic impact of nerfing Blade of Whiteplain, right? Because currently Blade of Whiteplain is the second most expensive card from the set, and yeah, this nerf will decrease the value of that card. Definitely, I'm definitely expecting it to go below $80. It's currently $80 right now, so I'm expecting it to see it like, I don't know, it can go as low as $40. It can reach Martyr of Whiteplain level. And we're only going to see those cards decrease in value, right? Until like someone unlocks an even more broken combo, or someone just wants to collect all the Light Verdict cards. But anyways, you know, from an economic impact, I'm not expecting it to hurt too much. Of course, it's going to make the cards, it's going to make the cards decrease in value, but because the supply is so low for Light's Verdicts, you know, the scarcity is still going to be there. So yeah, TLDR, sorry for that long tangent on Blade of Whiteplain. I just feel like the metagame right now needs more mid-range decks. I don't mind the stats change, but if you're going to do it, you need to make it you need to decrease the mana cost too. Like 5 mana 3/3 is pretty underwhelming, even with the draw effect. Like, yeah, 5 mana 4/4 is just such a sweet spot. Yeah, I love that design, but if yeah, a 5 mana 3/3 just doesn't feel good right now. Okay, that's enough of Blade of Whiteplain. Sorry for the tangent, but we're going to move on. Shines on us all. Text change. Change text from target a creature, then delve a creature of the same tribe. Each creature transforms into a base copy itself. 2. Bullet point. Target a creature if it has a tribe. Delve a creature of the same tribe and add it to your hand. Bullet point. Each creature transforms into a base copy of itself. Thank you. Making this text a lot clearer to what it does. Great. That's awesome. No change in functionality. That's fine. Great job, y'all. It's still not going to see play, though. I don't think this card is very good. Unless, I was thinking about it after I made my Lights Verdict, like, first look video. I guess you can use this card on, like, cards that enter the game damaged. So, Injured Sprout, for example, is a card you could play this on. You can also play this on Odysseus, the 6 mana Genesis set legendary that injures itself but summons 3 copies of Injured Warriors. So you can do that or play that card and then play Shines on Us All to basically get an Olympian that you can play next turn and then heal your Odysseus and other cards. So that's an interesting card to run with. Okay, next up we have Dearly Departed. Text change. Change text from this to Soulless Roar, obliterate creature in your opponent's hand. Afterlife, add a base copy of the obliterated creature to your opponent's hand. Nice, I like the text cleanup. It makes it more clear for new players to understand. Cool, and that's it for now. Thanks for sharing these changes up front. Okay, next, as we mentioned in our balance update last month, there will be another one soon to change up the meta. It's slated to go live within the month and will only encompass changes to regular Mortal Judgment and Core Set Refresh cards. Sick, cool. So there's going to be a meta shakeup soon. That's going to be great. Hopefully, it does something to address the polarized meta that we have right now. Hopefully it adds more mid-range cards or more counterplay to control decks or aggro decks or even OTK decks. Although I do think there's a fair amount of counterplay to OTK right now, and OTK is pretty weak. So hopefully that can happen. But yeah, I do like me some balance changes, yeah, or meta changes. That's going to be fun to go ahead and look up. Closing thoughts on everything. Well, you know how I feel about Blade of Whiteplain. Definitely you're going to see that card decrease in value, but I mean, it's still a good card. It's just not as fun to play as it, could be anymore, or as it used to be. Divine Coronet, Phyrric Knowledge nerfs were well needed. Overall, for Mortal Judgment, I mean, the power level of the set is pretty bad. In my opinion, it's pretty weak. You're not seeing any cards see play yet. I think there is potential for some cards, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, so far this set has been pretty underwhelming, and I wouldn't really invest in any of these cards per se, not yet at least. But from a collector's standpoint, the scarcity is there, right? So definitely, if you're looking to invest these cards, like these are some pretty good candidates. From a player standpoint, though, none of these cards are very powerful. They're not going to net you any short-term pluses, or they're not going to net you any short-term gains in terms of if you want to pull any of these cards and sell them. Unless you pull, of course, the chase cards like Therial, Martel, or Blade. But, I mean, hey, you're playing a play-to-earn game, right? Some of these cards that you get, you basically got them for free, and then you can sell them for, $2 to $5, sometimes more on the market. So, can't really complain about that. Yeah, those are my closing thoughts, y'all. There it is for the video. Thanks for tuning in. If you like the video and enjoy the content, please make sure to like it. subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and maybe share the video to anyone interested in Gods Unchained, yeah? But thank y'all for tuning in. Really appreciate you, and take care. See y'all next video. Peace!